In another nugget here on storage, we took a look at things like optical storage capabilities and magnetic storage capabilities. Let's build on that now. Let's talk about things like SSD, the most exciting storage technology today, or one of them. Let's talk about old school tape and redundant array of inexpensive disks. And we need the hot swappable functionality in that enterprise environment because, as I alluded to, hard drives die. Mechanical hard disks fail. Oh, and when they fail, by the way, you'll hear like a clicking or a clanking sound. Sure, there's mechanical moving parts inside. There's this rotating platter, and now you've got the drive read write head that swings around over the top of it, and it's probably bouncing off the darn platter, and you hear clank, 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 clank. It's ridiculous. Whew, I'm getting a little too excited. So, what do? In order to make hard drives remarkably faster and to make them longer life, we do solid state hard drives now. There is no moving parts inside anymore. It's all electronic stuff. And this new hard disk drive technology comes at a cost. Absolutely. If we're going to get longer life and we're going to get much better performance, then we need to be ready to spend money for that. And it stems back from earlier simple flash technologies. You remember these. I bet you've used these. These are compact flash cards. So, here's 32 gigabytes on this little card. Then there were SD cards. You might still use this today in your camera, a tiny little card giving you 2 gig. Size doesn't matter. Here's a micro SD card, which gives you 32 gigs of storage. Here's a mini SD card. This one gives you 4 gig. Here's an XD card for a camera, 2 gig. Here is what's called an eMMC module. This you might have in a tablet to do storage. So these technologies were precursors to taking and replacing the hard drive of your computer that's mechanical with solid state flash-based technologies that allow that very, very speedy reading and writing. And the great news is removing all those mechanical moving parts that could fail. Okay, now let's say you're in an environment where you want a blend of these technologies. Why would you want a blending of the technologies? Here's why. Let's say a 500 gig drive on the solid state drive side is going to cost you $1,000, and a 500 gig drive on the mechanical side is going to cost you $25. And I'm not exaggerating too much here, by the way. You can quickly see where, oh my goodness, to get a lot of the new solid state drive technology, and we're not talking a lot with 500 gig, that's a pretty small drive, you're spending a lot of money. So when you want to blend the performance increases with the size increases, I've got one shown right here, you would use a hybrid drive. You'll see these sometimes as dual drives. I don't like that terminology at all. I like hybrid drive, which CompTIA uses. Notice there is going to be a spinning platter inside, but there's also the solid state memory chips on it. And if you look closely, you'll see this has a 1 terabyte let me draw a 1 there. There we go. A 1 terabyte mechanical drive. And then, I can't make it out, but it's got like, let's say 256 gig of solid state drive technology. So when they sell this, they sell it as a 1 terabyte drive. Sure, it's 1 terabyte, but there is going to be portions of it that are utilized for really high utilization stuff. What am I talking about? Okay, so you've got this mechanical portion inside it that's relatively slow, and then you've got the high-speed memory chips inside of it, super fast. What the hybrid does is the drive recognizes that you don't use most of your storage stuff all the time. It just sits there, never being read. Sure, you wrote it once, maybe old photographs you wrote to the drive, but then you never go there anymore. So it keeps that stuff tucked away on the mechanical portion. And it keeps the stuff that you use all of the time, like the operating system files that you interact with every single day, it keeps that stuff on the memory chip high performance portion. So the hybrid technology is super cool, allowing the device to partition what you use a lot of and what you don't use a lot of. Now stay with me. I know this is a lot of information, but there's a couple more important points that I want to make here before we leave this topic of solid state technology that we're so excited about today. The hybrid drive that separates the information we use a lot of from information we don't access a lot, and then partitions it into the appropriate places in the drive, enterprises use that strategy for their overall setup as well. So you'll see this big data store, like maybe it's a huge building that's storing all of the data for a big company, and they will have disk arrays that are really fast in there, and that's where they store the stuff that people are accessing frequently. And then they may have disk arrays, collections of disks that are really slow, and that's where they'll put the information that people don't access as frequently. And the last point I'll make here for now is that there is one big, huge difference that we would be having from a maintenance and caring perspective when it comes to a solid state drive, pure solid state now, no hybrid technology, a pure solid state drive versus the old mechanical drive. There's a big difference in how we would care for these two, and that is defragmentation. With mechanical disk drives, we need to go in a Windows world, for example, and we need to defragment the disk. The data gets stored across the platter in a fragmented manner, and Windows can go in and clean that up and defragment the drive. We don't need to do this with solid state drive technology because the drive, the way it operates, it's not fragmenting the information. In fact, if we go in and defragment every night, we would shorten the life of the solid state drive, because the solid state drive isn't going to live forever. As information is written to it and read from it and rewritten and all that, it will basically, the way to think about it is wear out those storage cells. So keep in mind, when we move from something like a mechanical disk technology to a solid state technology, we do have to massage a little bit. We do have to vary the way in which we're going to care for the particular technology. Now, in a modern world today with incredible advancements in storage like solid state disk and drive technology, would we ever really be backing up to tape? I mean, really? What is this? VHS? Well, the answer is yes, we might still be moving information to tape. And I think I just gave away the punchline because I probably already mentioned we would be backing up to tape. In large enterprises today, because they once invested so much money in it, they might be taking really non-critical information and backing it up to tape still. Sure, these are going to have a very short life, but they're also going to have a very low price tag. They don't have a lot of storage capacity though, so that's why I threw a lot of these on screen for us to see. When we are dealing with tape, and that's so great, I just changed pens. This is called the Nervous pen. I love it. This is the pen when Anthony's had way too much caffeine. Let's switch back to our normal pen, and let's just point out that I put so many of these tapes on screen because that's what you would be dealing with if you were backing up a ton of your corporation's information to tape. You'd be dealing with a lot of tapes. We have jukeboxes That's right, that are going to move like robots, moving the tapes for us, putting a tape in when it's full, putting a new one in when it needs to be replaced, doing all the tape management. These robots will do this for us because we have to deal with so many of these tapes. We need a tape rotation strategy when we're dealing with tape. How are we going to retire tapes that we've written over too many times and we're worried about damaging them? So, I spoke a lot about tape. I seriously doubt you'd get a tape question in your exam environment. That'd be pretty strange because there are much more exciting technologies in use today, but we cover this kind of stuff because you definitely could encounter it still in IT today. But wait a minute. Haven't you heard of a technology when it comes to storage called RAID? And notice we are not talking about the very famous brand of insect repellent. We're talking about redundant array of inexpensive disks. RAID is super exciting technology that we use today because we love the word redundant. Redundant means if something bad happens to one of the disks, the other disks should be able to help out. I said should for a very important reason we'll see in a moment. So the redundant array of inexpensive disk technology allows us to give some level of redundancy. There's a level of redundancy called RAID 0. Why did they name it RAID 0? Because we don't truly get redundancy. What we do with RAID 0 is we take 2 disks or more, but we would have to take 2 disks at least, and we would stripe information across the 2 disks. So as we're writing and then reading information, we're doing 2 disks in parallel. This is called disk striping, another word for this. And this is great from a performance perspective, but if one of those disks fails, we're in big trouble. That's why it's RAID 0. It doesn't give us redundancy. So as you might guess, there's a RAID level 1. This is called mirroring, and we do get a redundancy in this. What we do is we write redundant copies. Let's take these 2 drives, and we would write the information to this drive, and we would mirror the information to drive number 2. So if one of these disks were to fail, no problem, we can get to the information on the second disk. So we get the redundancy with RAID 1, that's why it has a non-zero designation. Unfortunately, we don't get a performance enhancement. So they invented something called RAID 5, which is called disk striping with parity. And what happens here is we use at least 3 drives, very important. And we are going to stripe across those drives, and we're going to write some additional parity information so that if one of the drives is to fail, we can recreate the information that was on that drive using the 2 surviving drives. So we get performance and we get redundancy with RAID level 5. There are lots of other RAID levels. For instance, there's 1 plus 0, otherwise known as RAID level 10, which combines the mirroring technology with the striping technology. You need at least 4 drives in order to do this fancy approach. So think about it. With striping, we needed at least 2 drives. With mirroring, we needed at least 2 drives. With disk striping, with parity, we needed at least 3 drives. And with RAID 1 plus 0, or sometimes called RAID 10, we needed 4 drives. So there's tremendous variation in these different approaches. And I just covered a lot of information with you quite succinctly. This is something I will generate flashcards on for you. And of course, this may be a little section of this course that you want to watch a couple of times. How do we get performance? How do we get redundancy? How do we get both? How many drives would we need? And I'm going to add one more little bit for you here. I don't want your head to explode, of course not, but I do want to just point out one more thing about this. As you research RAID deeper, if you're interested in this topic, you'll discover there's hardware controlled RAID and there's software controlled RAID. Hardware controlled RAID is faster overall than when software tries to control these RAID mechanisms. So one of the things that we've seen in this nugget is there's so much more to the IT storage discussion than just size, otherwise known as capacity. But boy, oh boy, do we still worry about capacity today, because you don't want that embarrassing situation of trying to store someone's stuff and the media that you gave them to store it will not function. We mentioned a couple capacities as we went through here. For instance, on the old CD-ROM type of technology, we mentioned it was around 600 megabytes. With the DVD, it jumps up to 4 gigabytes. We could get roughly 8 gigabytes if we did the dual layer technology for the DVD. With tape, by the way, I mentioned it was small storage. It really does depend with tape on what year you're talking about. If you go back to the 1970s with tape, you're talking about less than a megabyte. If you go to 2014 tape technology, you're talking about terabytes worth of storage on a single tape. So tape is going to have generations of different technology that allow you to store varying amounts of data. But I hope I've impressed upon you in this nugget that it's not just capacity that we are looking at with storage. We want to discuss things like the lifetime of the media, how convenient it is, how does it perform. There are many, many things we need to look at when we are planning the storage strategy and the storage products that you're going to purchase for a customer and for yourself. And one of the most incredible benefits of your CBT Nuggets subscription is how easily you can delve so much deeper into a technology that interests you or your job dictates you delve deeper into. Let me just quickly wrap up this nugget by giving you an example of that. In this nugget, we discussed solid-state drive technology, and you realize it's super exciting. Tends to be a little pricey, but we love it because of the lifetime and the performance that we get out of those drives. Well, if I piqued your interest about technology and you want to go further than you need to in CompTIA A+, no problem. Come to our website, click on the magnifying glass. It says, "What would you like to learn?" Love it. I want to learn more about SSD. So I type that in. The first course that comes up is my NetApp Certified Storage Associate course. You click on that. It's got to have to deal with SSD. You scroll down and look at this. Introducing flash storage, 5 minutes. Flash storage components and performance, 7 minutes. Solid state technology, 6 minutes. Flash endurance, 11 minutes. So you've got great nuggets here that elaborate dramatically on this very interesting storage topic. Please be utilizing this incredible search functionality of our website to master the specifics of technologies that interest you. So you might have thought, oh, what a bore this nugget's going to be. Storage? Where do I put my pictures? No, this nugget is not at all a bore because there is so much going on in this sector of the IT industry because we have so much that we want to store digitally today. I sure hope this nugget was informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.